This is the board meeting of Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. And right now we are going to have a flag salute by Maya Angelou. And we have quite a group of young people here to lead us.
Good evening, President Phillips, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. We're so honored to be here tonight, and I am so excited for these fine young children to introduce themselves to you tonight. This last spring, our school decided for the first time to put applications out for leadership with our fourth graders so that they could start the year helping us and showing their leadership skills right at the beginning of the year. And so the leadership teachers took the top 10 candidates. They fill out quite a lengthy application, answer lots of questions on what they believe leadership is and what it looks like, as well as get recommendations from teachers within the building, recommending them to be leaders in our school. And these are the 6 of our top 10 candidates here tonight, and so I am going to let them introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Clara. I like Maya Angelou because it's always so friendly and nice to be at, and my dad bring me.
Stand up and wave, Dad.
Hi, I'm Ellie Brune. I like Maya Angelou because the school just makes me feel really welcome, and my mom brought me here today.
Mom?
Hello, my name is Parker Pentecost, and I like Maya Angelou because every teacher is super nice. And my mom, dad, grandma, and grandpa brought me here today.
Stand up.
Hi, my name is Jackson Bartlett, and one thing I like about Maya Angelou is all the fun events they have, and my mom, dad, and sister brought me.
Hello, my name is Kano, and I like Maya Angelou because it taught me how to cooperate with others, and my mom brought me. Hello, my name is Allie, and what I like about Maya Angelou is that all the teachers are nice, and my mom brought me here today. Hi, my name is Sophia, and I like Maya Angelou because it shows us how to show respect and help others. And my dad brought me.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Yes, they come up here. Yes.
I got here. I got that.
And thank you, parents, for bringing him and being so willing to stand up and wave. We love seeing the families. So this is one of the highlights of our board meetings. So thank you. Perfect. Good job. So moving on to our roll call, Mrs. Richardson. Present.
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 Excused.
Present.
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 Okay, I will entertain a motion for the approval of the regular board meeting of September 10th, 2024.
Board President Phillips, I move to approve the regular board meeting minutes from September 10th, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the regular board meeting of September 10th, 2024. Any discussion? Can I vote, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the agenda review.
There are no additions or changes to the board meeting agenda tonight. However, I would like to call the board's attention to our request for executive session under 4231-101G for the review of the performance of a public school employee and I for litigation.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to special recognition. We have a pink award for GISA Credit Union for donations and support to Pasco schools. And I have seen a lot about GISA and Pasco lately, so we are so glad to have you as a partner.
Yes, good evening, Board President Phillips, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. It's a privilege to be here tonight as we take a moment to recognize an outstanding community partner, one that has made a meaningful and lasting impact on the lives of our students, staff, and schools. Tonight, Pasco School District is proud to present the Partners in Kindness Award, or PINK Award, to GISA Credit Union in recognition of their generous support and commitment to our district. I'd like to invite Marisol Peralta, come on up, Evan Belt, Stephen Kurtz, and Tatiana Vasquez. You all can come join us right here. So GISA Credit Union's mission, people helping people, is more than just words. It's a guiding principle that has brought to life their long-standing partnership with Pasco School District. This mission resonates in everything GISA does, ensuring that their work makes a positive and meaningful difference in the communities they serve, including our own. In the 2024-25 school year alone, GISA's contributions to Pasco School District totaled an impressive $102,159. This generosity has touched many vital programs, including the Affinity Debit Card Program, which contributed $66,609 back to support CTE at our middle and high schools, a $20,000 sponsorship for our Pasco School District calendar, a $10,000 sponsorship of our All-Staff Expo and Rally, and through the peak partnerships with Stevens, Chiawana, New Horizons, and Pasco High Schools, which provided $2,700 to support important student initiatives. Beyond these significant contributions, GISA also helped bring our community together by sponsoring events like the PSD Back to School Night with the Dust Devils, with a $2,500 sponsorship, and by supporting both our students and staff with Dutch Bros gift cards and Pasco Press staff newsletter gift card prizes. So these acts of generosity reflect GISA's unwavering belief in the importance of uplifting our schools and providing opportunities for students to thrive. Together, we share a vision of a stronger, more connected community where every student has a chance to succeed. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to GISA for continuing to invest in the future of our students, our staff, and our entire district. Your dedication goes beyond financial contributions. It's about building relationships, fostering growth, and empowering our youth to reach their full potential. So thank you, GISA, for making a lasting difference in the lives of our students and staff and schools. So let's give them a round of applause. Mike, we're going to present you with a PEAK Award plaque, but if you all can come down, board members, we'll get a picture of all of you in front of the logo.
You're great.
Moving on to audience comments. We, just a reminder about audience comments, we have comments right now that you can come up and comment. And just a reminder too, if there's anything that you're interested on later in the program, we also provide time after the reports for you to comment as well. You have 2 minutes. This lovely cone right here will be green for the first minute and a half, then it will turn yellow for the last 30 seconds, and then when it's red, you need to be done with your comments, and please don't make me cut you off. I really hate cutting you off. But if you do have more comments than 2 minutes we'll give you, then please do email the board. We would love to hear from you. Are there any audience comments today?
Good evening, Superintendent Whitney, Board President Phillips, members of the board. My name is Guy Smurthwaite, and I am a teacher here in Pasco. And I actually promised Student Representative Reyna that I was going to speak tonight about teaching and learning, and more specifically about resources for teaching and learning. You see, as a member of the union, we meet with the district weekly, and we talk about things that are happening. And last spring, we met with Dr. Smart, and he gave us a rundown on the cost of printing. And he encouraged us not to use our desktop printers because that costs the district the most money, and that if we had to make immediate copies, that we should go and use the school copier because that costs a little bit less money. But if we had a long-term plan, we should use the print shop from the district, which costs the district the least amount of money. And we put that out there to the whole union. We said, hey, let's be fiscally responsible, and we have been. The problem is the infrastructure. We don't have the resources we need to teach our students. Poor Danica's been waiting for a week to get materials for a lesson that Central Washington University says she has to have. So this is district-wide. We got an email saying they're so far behind. And I want to be very clear, I don't blame the people who work in print shop. There's just not enough of them. You need to either hire somebody or buy more copiers. But if you want students to be successful, you have to provide them with the resources they need to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Mr. Garrett? Okay, there are no more reports online. We do love hearing from our community, so thank you for coming. Moving on to consent agenda. We have personnel, warrants, approval of conditional certificates and permits, 2024-2025 transportation salary schedule, overnight student travel for Chihuahua High School DECA students to attend DECA Western Leadership Conference in Bellevue, Washington, overnight student travel for Pasco High School DECA students for Bellevue, Washington, out-of-state and overnight student travel for New Horizons FFA group to attend National FFA Convention at Indianapolis Convention Center, overnight student travel for Chihuahua High Schools to Future Educators Summit in North Bend, Washington, Orion High School project construction change order number 3, Sageview High School project construction change order number 12. I would entertain a motion.
Board President Phillips, I move that we pass the consent agenda as presented.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second to pass the consent agenda as presented. Do we have any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Richardson? Yes.
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 We have no action items tonight, nor do we have an extended study session. So moving on to reports, our first report is on celebrating student achievement, closing gaps for McGee Elementary Washington School Recognition Program. We're excited to have so many of McGee's staff here. So we'll turn the time over to you, Ms. Goebel.
Good evening. I'm back with some more celebrations. Board President Phillips, Superintendent Whitney, members of the board, and student board representatives. Again, tonight I have the privilege of highlighting another one of our schools. and celebrating student achievement at James McGee Elementary School. And we have some staff members in their really cool shirts. I just love seeing the shirts. Again, I'm not going to go through all of the details because I feel like I'm repeating myself, but just to give an overview, McGee Elementary School is being recognized for its outstanding achievement in closing the gap category, specifically for English learners and students with disability during 22 and 23 school year. We are honored to have Emily Gomez, the principal, if you want to wave. And as well as, I think I saw Daniel Garza, who is AP, and all the staff, you can wave at everyone, for joining us to celebrate this big accomplishment. As I've shared with you that these achievements recognition is done by the State Board of Educators, the three organizations that who actually collaborate using the WSIF, Washington State School Improvement Framework scores, and they actually have resumed this after COVID. Again, the schools are identified using the framework. As I mentioned, there are three categories: closing gaps, growth, and achievement, utilizing the following data. And McGee is actually being recognized for closing the gaps, which I'll share the data with you in a minute. So closing gaps, a category specifically honor schools that were previously identified for targeted support. So I'm going to share later that McGee was actually identified as a school that's called Tier 1 for two groups of students that was students with disability and English learners. And it's based on ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act. And when schools are receiving this award, that they've actually met or surpassed the goals that they have set forth. You've seen this matrix before. For closing gaps, there are those areas where they're actually looking at the Washington State School Improvement Framework, the WSIF data for change in all students and/or change in groups of students that previously identified, specifically in this case for McGee is English learners and students with disability. So let's look at their data. And this is always kind of fun to pull together to do some comparison. So for targeted student support schools, all school student groups with 2023 WSIF score, and I've shared that with you before in terms of how they create this deciles, that they have to actually meet what they call it a threshold. And they have to actually improve, they have to surpass the threshold. As a reminder, the threshold is how schools who are in improvement are identified. On the graphic, as you can see, I've actually put 2 years of McGee's data in all students as well as all the student groups for 22-23. And 22-23, the threshold was actually 2.19, and 23, the threshold was 2.25, which means that schools, in order for them to not be in the school improvement, they have to be above that. The threshold 2.29, those are those deciles that I talked about. Schools that are below the threshold means that in that subcategory, those students are like below 5%, the bottom 5% of the state. That's how those points are identified. As you can see from this graphic, actually, if you look at McGee's, they made growth in all of them. So the blue was 22, and the orange is 23. As you can see, the orange is higher in all students, including the all students. They went from 5.6 to 6.35. But I want you to notice specifically our English learners and students with disability, that they actually, as you can see, the slope is pretty steep. English learners, they went from 2.2 decile, which was just on the threshold in 2022. They actually went to 4.17. And the threshold was actually they had to get above the 2.19, and they've actually exceeded that by quite a bit, almost double. Same thing with students with disability. That was one area that actually was below the threshold in 2022 was 1.75, and the threshold was 2.19. As you can see, in 1 year, they've actually improved to 3.13. So they have 0 areas that are below the threshold. So not only did they actually are getting awards for closing the gap, but as you can see, In 21-22, McGee was actually identified as a tier 1 with those targeted groups of students who were being below the threshold. To last year, they went to foundational, which means none of the groups are below the threshold. So they are considered foundational where not identified any tier supports. So I just want to give them a huge hand. So it's a big accomplishment for the staff. So I just want to congratulate the students and staff. And I know this is Emily's actually second year, so I do want to give a shout out to Wendy LP, who was actually the principal prior to Emily being there. So it's a group effort for sure. Always a question, how did you get here? So these questions were actually answered by the school team. And I was sharing with Superintendent Whitney that I love seeing like that's the theme. Every school that was accomplished, these are the things we're doing, and you've seen it and heard it, but it's in their words. So the school's commitment to really fidelity in Tier 1 instruction is supported by several key instructional strategies and tools. ARC, using the ARC toolkits, are used to regularly for small group lessons, while math expressions is aligned with priority standards to ensure consistent, high-quality instruction in math. Formative assessments like ERLA and ENEAL are employed to monitor student progress. And a standards-aligned intervention system helps meet the diverse student needs and our multilingual learners as well. Targeted small group instruction informed by ARC assessment allows teachers to address specific learning gaps with continuous progress monitoring to ensure ongoing growth. Additionally, the school emphasized professional development, providing evidence-based training to enhance instructional practices. Notably, 100% of K-5 general education teachers are GLAD trained and support effective instruction for English learners. Collaborative efforts with Dr. Cruz and the professional learning communities further strengthen teaching and really utilizing Pasco School District Biliteracy team who provides ongoing support and professional learning. And I know also McGee had a huge team going to Avid Summer Institute this summer for the first time, so they're actually implementing Avid school-wide, which will actually just accelerate those durable skills that we've just talked about. Other notable things is, addressing the whole child. The school is committed to fostering social emotional learning through a comprehensive Tier 1 approach. They use CARES, it's an acronym for Cooperation, Attitude, Responsibility, Effort, and Safety. Durable skills all over again, right? Those are essential to students actually accessing academics. They use other curriculum to really bolster the social emotional learning K-5. There's some other ones, data-driven decision-making, using those MTSS, social emotional learning behavior, fidelity indicators, those are the things they look at, using really evidence-based Tier 2 menu to address students' social emotional and really mental health needs. And also they had a big attendance initiative where, because students have to be there to learn, right? So improving student attendance through continuous monitoring, regular attendance meetings are held with families, and to address the concerns in terms of frequent absences, really collaborating with teachers and communicate the impact of absences on student learning as well. So I just want to congratulate the students, staff, and families at McGee Elementary School. So maybe I can entertain some questions first before I invite the whole team up for photos. Are there any questions or comments for McGee and McGee team?
I just want to, I'm sure my other colleagues will echo this, but congratulations to McGee. This is, we've received multiple now presentations over the last several weeks, months even, demonstrating how our schools are continuously improving and working to close gaps, to continue to challenge our students, and to address their learning needs. And I think just demonstrates the skill and excellence of our educators and our dedication of our staff and our administrators and the hard work of our students. So congratulations.
This data is impressive when looking at not just the improvements that were highlighted in the data from 22 to 23, but growth in every subgroup of students. And that is absolutely amazing, just amazing work, and speaks to the work that you are doing, and that there was a need seen and you addressed the need, and we see the improvement, and you've affected the lives of our students so positively. So thank you.
I had the privilege about a year ago going out to McGee and learning about your ARC and your implementation of the ARC program. And that was my first introduction to ARC. And I think the superintendent drugged me out there because she really wanted I think she just wanted that board support and that belief that, because I have been so worried about our student scores. And she's like, this is going to change everything. And I was so impressed with the fidelity that it was implemented out there. And it has to have something to do with, as with this. You're seeing the results now. I'm guessing, I'm sure there's all of these other things too, but you've done an incredible job with that and been an example to a lot of the rest of the district in your implementation. So thank you for your hard work.
And I will say that when my youngest went to McGee, they won a CARES award. They are now a freshman in high school, and it still hangs on our wall.
And I'll just say real quick too, not to echo what has already been said, and I agree with everything. Well, I guess kind of to echo what has been said. Impressed with the level of effort surrounding the ARC program and the implementation of the things you've done to use those frameworks and improve scores. Also, the work surrounding those students with disabilities. That's impressive. So.
Yeah, I was seeing like the areas for improvement and then making those improvements very impressive. And to add on what Ms. Brown said, I went to McGee and I still have my plaque from my CARE award on my wall still. So, yeah.
Again, just to reiterate, what you guys were doing was some amazing work. I also went to McGee, and I also still have my award on my wall. McGee was definitely one of the schools I have some of my fondest memories of, and the staff there has always been amazing. So just congratulations on this.
It's always an incredible achievement to improve in every single student subgroup, especially in an elementary school. It's super important to reinforce at the lowest level, or not the lowest level, the youngest level of our education system to boost the higher levels. So I'm super proud of every single one of you guys.
So with that, I'm going to invite the McGee staff to come on up. We do have a Pride of Pasco pin for each one of you, and we'll get your picture taken as a staff. So there's enough for everyone.
All right, thank you. Moving on to our construction update. It's always exciting to have a construction update in our busy world of construction right now. So, Mr. Sital?
Board President Phillips, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board, I'm here to provide an update on the 2023 bond construction project. But before I continue, I want to introduce my capital projects team. You want to stand up and say hello?
Hi,
These are the people doing a great job. Sageview High School. Here is a summary of details for Sageview High School construction project. As it enters its 63rd week, the construction is currently 68% complete and remains on track for a completion date of August 1st, 2025. While developing the bond budget, the capital projects team collaborated with architecture and engineering firms to finalize an estimate for Sageview High School. The budget estimates include the total project cost was estimated at $184 million. The brick and mortar or construction cost was estimated at $128 million. The brick and mortar or construction bid award to Fowler Construction was $123 million. Change orders are currently tracking at 1.3%, which is well below the industry standard of 3.5%. And we are expected to remain below the industry standards throughout the construction budget. The capital projects team is pleased to report that we remain on budget. Change orders approved by the board of directors on the consent agenda of regularly scheduled board meetings. These lists are not all inclusive, but instead intended to be illustrative. Infrastructure change orders are necessary updates or adaptations that ensure compliance with codes and/or address environmental concerns that impact the project's functionality or safety. Some examples include fire line loop, parking lot modifications to accommodate drop-off, parent drop-off, road modifications to accommodate traffic. Enhancement change orders improve the project's value or functionality beyond the original scope. Some examples include upgraded roof membrane, anti-graffiti sealer, and track surface upgrade. Remedial change orders are necessary to bring the project in line with specifications or standards. Some examples include eye wash stations, firewall requirements, and sewer storm water requirements. This drone video showcases an aerial overview of the Sageview High School construction project, highlighting its progress and key developments. Orion High School. As it enters its 24th week, the construction of Orion High School is currently 25% complete, and remains on track for a completion date of August 5th, 2025. Each day, the construction crews are making significant strides, with notable progress evident at every stage of the project. In creating the budget for Orion High School, the capital projects team used the same process as Sageview High School. The budget estimates include the total project cost for Orion High School is estimated at $38 million. The brick and mortar or construction cost was estimated at $32 million. The brick and mortar or construction bid award to Fowler Construction was $27 million. Change orders, an update will be provided when the project is over 50% complete. The capital projects team is pleased to report that we remain on budget. This drone video showcases the aerial overview of the Orion High School construction project, highlighting its progress and key developments. CTE enhancements and modernization for Chihuahua and Pasco High Schools. In the spring of 2026, the CTE enhancements and modernizations will begin at Pasco High School and Chihuahua High School. The enhancements will focus on CHS STEM and agriculture science labs. The modernization will upgrade the PHS trade programs and CT foods and nutrition programs. These projects will elevate educational facilities and resources. The estimated completion date for both projects is fall of 2027. Athletic fields facilities, as part of the 2023 bond project, the district will enhance athletic fields and facilities, including the addition of a new softball field at Pasco High School. We are still on schedule for construction to begin in spring of 2026. Our community often asks, why are we waiting to begin construction on the Pasco High School softball fields and other projects? This project remains a priority. However, Sageview and Orion High Schools were selected to be our first construction projects because our existing high schools were overcrowded. To begin those projects, we had to front fund the costs. After we begin to receive state match dollars reimbursing us for the upfront cost of the school construction, we will have the cash flow to begin other projects, including constructing of the softball field. In summary, the capital projects team is happy to share that our construction projects are advancing as planned, staying on schedule, and within budget. Our team feels confident about our current progress, and we're diligently overseeing each phase to ensure we stay on track. With a proactive strategy and commitment to quality, we are well equipped to achieve our objectives and deliver outstanding results. This concludes our bond and construction update. Thank you.
Any questions from the board or comments?
Sorry, real quick. Hey, when were we going to address our long-term facilities plan again? I can't remember what we had.
Yes, so it's currently a district annual objective, so I'll be bringing action plans back at the first meeting in October, which I guess is the next meeting. But we're currently working on getting data together and getting a plan to share with the board, so we're working on it now.
Because I was just thinking if those projects, the CTE projects are going to begin in 2026, is there any chance that could impact or have an impact or be impacted by our facilities management plan? Just a thought.
No, so those projects were identified as a priority under the existing long-term facilities management plan, and they have been advertised as part of the bond, and so we are committed as a district to deliver on those promises to our community. So there's nothing that could happen in this current effort to refresh the plan that would undermine our commitment to those projects. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Cital, I appreciate your attention to detail on the change orders and what they are for. There's been rumblings in the media and among the community about the change orders, and I would hope that those people that are concerned would see that we're, as a district and a board, submitting those and approving those change orders to make sure and try and prevent traffic, like we have at some of our other high schools, the traffic blocking when parents are dropping off, when students are driving to the school, that we're being safe with eyewash stations and I just really appreciate the attention to detail and the examples, and it's just difficult sometimes to be the recipient of criticism when it's not founded, and so I see, and I hope that the community sees as well that these change orders were necessary and very, well, I guess just necessary.
So I appreciate the comment, Director Brown, and I just wanted to amplify that 2 of the 3 change order categories are required. They're required by code, they're required by compliance. The category in the middle are decisions that we make as a district. However, they're nominal investments now that will save us in the long term. So I just really wanted to be clear that 2 of the 3 categories are really outside of our control.
Yeah, I noticed that enhancements were all things that will end up saving the district in the long run. A roof membrane, an upgraded roof membrane, anti-graffiti sealer, and track surface upgrade, all that will lengthen the life of those things and help them not to have so many expenses in the upkeep. So that's great.
Assistant Superintendent Cital, do we have a estimated date for completion for the Pasco High softball field construction?
The spring of 2000, I said construction begins the spring of 2026.
Yeah.
It'll take us through the summer. So probably fall of 27.
Okay, so over a year perhaps?
No, it'll be about 3
Like
months.
6 months. Oh, 3
3 to
okay.
4 months
So
worth of
pretty
construction.
quick. Okay, great. I'd just like to make a comment about all of this. So I haven't had a chance to drive past the construction at Sage View in a little while, and so I'm seeing this video, my review of the packet and tonight, and it's just really amazing about how quick all the construction is going, including even Orion, where we had issues we found ash, the Assistant Superintendent Cital and I, discussed this like back in August or July, finding this ash and having to momentarily pause construction and figure out how to deal with this situation. Now we're proceeding again. And so it's just amazing how much progress we're making. We're under budget. The change orders are minimum. And, you know, I can't stress this enough. All of this is made possible because the community, because Pasco decided to invest their hard-earned tax dollars into the future of the students and the children of our community. When they passed this bond in 2023, they said that we are going to invest significantly into the future and success of our children and our families. And it's critical that we have the brick and mortar infrastructure to house our students and to allow our educators to teach our students. And the district is spending these tax dollars responsibly and with purpose. The purpose being what the voters said is making sure we have the infrastructure, the upgrades at all our high schools and the new ones to give our students first class, highest quality instruction possible. And so I commend the superintendent and her staff in making sure that we fulfill this promise we made to the voters and following through on their will.
I just wanted to make one more comment too, and that is, you know, construction is an interesting process, and it's a dynamic process, and you can't predict everything in the beginning. And sometimes as construction is being performed or going along, opportunities come up. Maybe a better price on a roof, you know, that wasn't intended before, that might increase a cost a little bit much, but we'll get way better bang for our buck. You know, I know that goes on being in construction myself. So, like my fellow director said here, is I think that the district is doing a very good job at managing those funds appropriately to what the community wants and what the community has asked to be done. So, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Even with Orion staying in under budget after finding that huge ash vein on the property, things like that you can't predict in construction. There's really no way to do that. And to be able to say that we're still staying on budget and keeping those costs down, that is impressive. So we do appreciate your efforts there. I think you could see all of us up here maybe a little is an understatement, sad that we can't get that Pasco High School field built for those girls before the 2027 season. That is, anyway, I know it only affects a few of our girls, but they've waited for so long. And I understand that there isn't cash flow for that. And I also understand that we're putting the needs of literally thousands and thousands of our high school students that are so incredibly overcrowded right now so that we can get those schools open before we build that. But I'm sure we will do all we can to help those girls get by until that time. And we totally understand. You can only do so much about cash flow, so.
And I misspoke. It'll be open in the fall of 26.
Is there a season in the fall?
Yes, softball has now 2 seasons, one in the fall and one in the spring.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Yes, so it'll be open for the fall season.
Okay, well, that's great. That's a little better than I thought. So anyway, so thank you for trying so hard and being responsible with the taxpayers' dollars. That's really critical.
And I would add to the comments of the board president and say that while I personally, I'm sure all my colleagues wish we could have these improvements at Pasco High done quicker and at Chiawana done quicker, there is a clear roadmap, a clear plan of getting these projects completed. We have due dates that we're working towards, and these improvements at Pasco High and Chiawana will get done at the dates that we're setting forth for the public. So I'm glad to hear that we have a clear path ahead of us.
I know I was going over all of the funding options with Mrs. Whitney. What about this? Can we use this? No, we can't because of this. We can't because of that. I'm like, oh, I wish we could do that for those girls. But anyway, we can only do what we can do. So thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you to your team.
Oh, and by the way, Mr. Stahl, I knew you were presenting tonight, so I'm like, I have got to go drive by that. So I did. I drove by the site. And on the Friday update that we get as board members, it said that all the sod was put into the fields. So I was looking as hard as I could, stopping, and you can kind of see it in the distance. So it was really good to be able to see it on the, I don't know, aerial view, because that's impressive to have all those fields up and ready so that they will be able to play football in a year because the grass will be rooted well enough in order to do that. So thank you. And I guess it's not football, but because they have turf, but baseball and soccer and all those things. So moving on to the student advisory voting and student board representatives by Mrs. Michelle Whitney.
Board President Phillips, members of the board, it's my pleasure to be in front of you tonight. We're going to do some work together to bring some conversations that we've been having over the course of a couple of years full circle for you to confirm some direction for us and give us some direction on some other areas with the hope that we'll be able to actualize movement forward on a set of asks that you've amplified for the district, like I said, over a couple of years. So the purpose is to revisit some recommendations that were made in February of 2024 by the Superintendent Student Action Council as requested by the board and confirm or request direction to frame some next steps moving forward. So I included in your packet a very comprehensive background that started really at the beginning of how our Student Voice program started. So I'm not going to walk through every one of these bullets because it really takes you back to the dawn of time before when we very first started talking about this. But what's I think important for this board is that you as a board asked the Student Advisory Council and last year's student board officers, or student board representatives, to work together to frame a set of recommendations for you. And those recommendations were around how we would implement our Student Voice program. And just by way of reminder, our Student Voice program has two very distinct components, but there is an overlap to those components. So we have our 3 student board representatives, which are Owen and Danica and Mason this year. And then we also have a Superintendent Student Advisory Council that has 30 or more students on it. And the overlap is that our current student board representatives help me facilitate that group and in a lot of ways actually run that group. And we bring things from student council to the board and the board asks us to take things to them. So there truly is this overlap and dynamic relationship between the student board representatives and the board and the Student Action Council. So as we looked at that program, and always as a learning institution, always wanting to reflect and get better, especially up against the things that we learned together at WASDA, et cetera, you had asked that the Student Advisory Council make some recommendations. The first recommendation was around multi-year terms for student board representatives. So there was at a point a conversation around should student board representatives come on as juniors and spend 2 years with us. So we took that to the Student Action Council, and their recommendation is to allow multi-year terms, but you would have to apply and interview again. So the term remains a single year, but if any individual, so for example, Mason, as a junior wanted a second term, he would then apply again and interview. That was the recommendation from the Student Advisory Council and the student board representatives. When we talked about that in February as a board, the direction at that time was to accept this recommendation. So if that continues to be the recommendation of the board, there's really no further steps needed from you because that is allowable under the current policy. The other recommendation was around how would we incorporate the new high schools into our current Student Voice program. And the recommendation from the Student Action Council was to add an additional position, and the goal would be, or that we would have 1 student from each of the 3 comprehensive high schools, and the 4th seat would rotate between the small innovative high schools. Again, at the February meeting, the board accepted this recommendation. So if this continues to be the direction of the board, Sarah and I would work together to update our existing policy and procedure and bring that back to you at a future meeting for consideration. Finally, and maybe the less straightforward of the three, was around the student advisory voting. And there really was and has been kind of a split perspective about the concept of student advisory voting. So 84% of the kids that are on the Superintendent Student Action Council that are not student board representatives voted yes for this concept of an advisory vote. And their fundamental rationale for that was that the school board is accountable to the students and the advisory vote is a reminder of that accountability. So they felt like to remind you as board members of your accountability to them as students, that they should be allowed to do an advisory vote on action items that you're considering as board members. Historically, student board representatives have not been supportive of advisory voting. And it really has to do with they feel like their voice already matters and that they don't need that kind of formality to feel like they've been heard, seen, or valued during board meetings. We have also had individual student board representatives and individual student board representatives' parents voice concerns about lodging formal advisory votes, especially on controversial topics that could put student board representatives in a position to be kind of in between teachers and employees and kind of be embedded in a controversy as high school students. There was also concern raised by parents that these meetings are recorded and they are available online in perpetuity. And as an 18-year-old, 17-year-old, Mason's turning 16 on Thursday, as a 15, almost 16-year-old, what he thinks today may change by the time he's 20, 25, and yet it's memorialized on YouTube for the rest of his life, was a concern that a parent brought up. So the concept of advisory voting is one that there isn't really a clear path forward with the students. The students that sit on the dais have concern. The parents of students who sit on the dais have concern. The students in the advisory council thinks it's a great idea because you need to be reminded of your accountability. So when there's division like that, as a superintendent and as a leader, I always try to do what I call thread the needle, is like, how can we find a path forward that best meets everyone's needs? And I think there's a couple paths forward. Initially, our recommendation was to use the Student Advisory Council as a recommending body. So if there's an action that the board is thinking of taking, you would direct the student board representatives to take that matter to the Student Action Council. As a collective voice, they could then make a recommendation that the students would bring back. Therefore, there's kind of a unified recommendation from that group. No singular person has to kind of own the total weight of that accountability. I would also offer that in consulting with neighboring school districts, both Kennewick and Richland have student advisory voting as policy. Consulting those superintendents, one of the two districts, they consult their student board representatives prior to the meeting where action is taken. And if the student representatives feel comfortable doing an advisory vote, then that is communicated to the president, and the president of the board would then ask for an advisory vote. If the students vocalize they would rather, they're not comfortable making an advisory vote, they don't even feel comfortable abstaining from the vote, then they're just simply not asked on that matter. But it's the students who drive whether they would participate in the advisory vote or not. It's not the adult board members who make that decision for them. So that's another alternative path that might be kind of that thread the needle concept, if the board wants to consider the concept of advisory voting. I think staff's recommendation would be, if you want to go down this road, staff's recommendation would be not to use the Student Advisory Council and allow them to make recommendations as a collective. If you want to, we would just caution you to put some real parameters in place and protections for our students who have over really the last 12 student board representatives have vocalized concern about it. So just bringing that forward and representing the voice of the student board representatives that have come before Danica, Owen, and Mason to vocalize their concerns. So at this point, what I need from the board tonight is confirmation that you want to maintain the direction given before on multi-year terms and integration of a student board member based on high school opening, and then a board discussion around this particular issue, and we need direction in terms of how you want us to go. And depending on the direction you give us, if you choose not to do student advisory voting, we don't need to do anything because there's there's nothing to do about that. If you choose to do something around student advisory voting, then Sarah and I would be doing some policy work to bring back to you for your consideration. So confirmation on a couple of prior direction given, and then I need direction around student advisory voting. I'm happy to answer any questions before you get into board discussion as well.
Any questions for Superintendent Whitney before we go into whether or not to implement the advisory vote?
Could I just get clarification on what student advisory voting is?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So does a board member want to clarify, or I'm happy to clarify it if a board member doesn't want to?
So student advisory voting before the board takes action on an action item where we, other than like I suppose that it would include the meeting minutes and the consent agenda items as well. But and other items that we take action on, whether it be to revise policy or to guide the district to do something, we take a vote on it when a quorum of the board or a majority approves it, then it moves on and into take action. So a student advisory vote would allow you as student representatives to participate in that, to advise the board what is the student voice on that action item. So that's in a nutshell.
It would be a formal vote. Oftentimes we ask you what your opinion is, and you kind of tell us what you think. It would be, what is your vote, Mason? What is your vote, Danica? So it would be a more formal process rather than just what's your opinion on the matter.
So you would participate when we say, let's a roll call vote, and then you would be included in that roll call vote.
Are we included as a collective or as individuals?
So you wouldn't be included in the roll call vote because you're not elected officials. Your vote is an advisory vote, meaning that it advises the board. Then the roll call vote would be taken by the board. So it would be a more formal process of what is your vote, and then we would go into the roll call vote of the board members.
So just to clarify, Mason, your name would be called and you would be saying, yes, I support this, or no, I don't. So you would be, as an individual on the record, advising the board potentially.
Or you could abstain, right?
You could abstain.
Yeah, you could abstain. Abstain.
The one thing I wanted to ask you real quick, Superintendent Whitney, was...
Did that help, Owen? Did
huh?
it? Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
Steve.
I didn't mean
No,
to.
it's okay.
I wasn't stepping on anyone's toes. So Kennewick and Richland, they both have well, they do have advisory votes, I guess, is what you're saying. So has there been any context behind how that's gone? If there's ever been issues with that, or if they've experienced, I don't know if you communicated that.
The general, it's like, yeah, it's great. and one of the districts they do it differently. So one of them does it as part of the board meeting, and one of them asks the students ahead of time whether the students want to or not. And if they don't want to, then that doesn't even happen in the board meeting. So in that particular district, that model is working for them.
So what happens to something like a budget vote that has a lot of complexities that, we'll go and spend an hour or two with the finance person in the district? They still would do something?
I think that's a question for the board. So
Okay.
if this is something you want to do, as a board, you're going to have to come to consensus around all of those pieces. Now, Sarah and I can, if the direction is to implement this, Sarah and I can go do some policy research and bring you back examples of what other districts are doing. But those are all the complexities that you as a board will have to agree on.
Yeah, I've actually been asking quite a few people across the state, what do you think, what do you think, and had a wide range of opinions on the matter. So let's open it to discussion on what you feel about the advisory vote for our board. Does anybody have an opinion on that?
Well, a comparison that I've was just thinking of that popped in my head was, up until recently, we, in Washington State, we had advisory votes on taxes. And I actually thought those were a good thing. I mean, it really helped the legislature see what the state's feeling was. But that's on a bigger scale. This is very different. Like you said, it may be better as a community as a whole, kind of like the state advisory votes were versus the individual. I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea. I have been in the past. A lot of what Superintendent Whitney brought up are my concerns. A big one being, two of the big ones are, first, the implications that it could have on the students and the environment in school when their main concern is learning. And then second would be the board, if not following the advisory vote, what the implications could be there. And that would be my two main concerns with that. But I mean, in theory, it's not. I don't think it's bad.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So I was the one who originally brought this to discussion a few years ago. We've been through, you are a third iteration of student representatives since we've been talking about this. So I've heard the student concerns and the parent concerns since I requested that this be a discussion topic for us. Since I brought it up, since I requested to have it added to the agenda and become this topic of discussion and what we're going to do with it, I've learned a lot about the Superintendent Student Action Council, which I believe is really, really beneficial, and we get a lot of feedback. And we've actually asked Superintendent Whitney, please take this to the Superintendent Student Action Council and bring us back the results. And it's a great way to hear and incorporate student voice. Where I think the advisory vote is beneficial is if we happen to have student representatives who might be reserved or don't like to give public comments on on topics that we're hearing and taking action on, that kind of does like our presentation says, that has that, well, I have accountability, and so I do need to participate, and I do need to have an opinion, and if I choose to abstain, I can. We all have that opportunity as board members, but as board members and as representatives, it's also part of our responsibility to be the voice of our community. And you, as you applied to be up here to represent your student population, your student community, that is your responsibility as well. So I feel like that's another benefit, is that we really get to hear, and it kind of increases that sense of accountability for you. I mean, this is what it's like to be up here and to be chosen, appointed, or elected. You aren't elected, but to be this voice, and there's a lot of power, but also a lot of responsibility that goes with it. And it's like, I feel like it's that teaching moment that, okay, this is something that's really important. On the other hand, I definitely understand, the parent concerns and your student concerns of this is a permanent record. And I mean, I know that from my personal core values and the way that I view the world is a 180 from when I was your age. And so I to have like my thoughts that I had about politics or school communities, like to be out there for people to digest at their free will and to bring back to remind me, would be a little harrowing. And so I suppose there's what I'm, since I've now presented two opposing viewpoints, what I like the idea of taking it back to you who have been chosen by the district as your student, as the student representatives, to like every year say, okay, this is an opportunity for you. Would you like this idea of having an advisory vote? Because what I don't want to do is say, okay, now you've put yourself in a position as a 17 or 16, 17, in this case 15-year-old, not
almost
an adult
16
yet.
on Thursday.
and as a minor and not really having this full, like your brain isn't even fully formed yet, and then asking you to put yourself on public record, So I like the idea of coming back every year and saying, you know, maybe Superintendent Whitney, this is a conversation you could have with newly appointed student representatives. This is an option for you. What do you think? And I think that would really incorporate like our individual student representative voice rather, and I would be satisfied with that, to be able to say, okay, well, these students understand like the repercussions of having this advisory vote, and it's big to them, and so they would like to just rely on the Superintendent Student Action Council for any guidance that the board wants on student voice that isn't given across the dais. So that's my recommendation as an individual board member.
Board President Phillips. So in regarding the first two recommendations, I still support expanding the number of student representatives from 3 to 4. I think it's really important that all 3 of our high schools are represented. I know how difficult it can be to recruit applicants from the high schools, but on its merits, I think it's important that Sageview, Pasco, and Chiawana each have a representation on the dais, along with our innovative schools. I think allowing our representatives to seek a re-election is also good. I think hopefully that the experience of the first year would make the applicant seeking renewal would give them a little extra skill set that might be of use to them in their second year if they're selected. So regarding the advisory vote, so I think that both Director Brown and Director Simmons bring up important points, and I think on its merits regarding the vote, I think that as Superintendent Whitney's mentioned, there is a way, as Kennewick does, to mitigate the fear of placing our students on record on a contentious issue, working with them behind the scenes before the meeting, and making sure that if the student is comfortable voting on the issue, and if not, then orchestrating an agenda script that would ensure that student is not put on record, not required, not to be asked to vote, either up or down or abstain. But there's always the abstention too, which there's nothing wrong with voting abstain. In some cases, it's warranted to vote abstain on the issue. So I think there are ways to mitigate this concern about placing our students on record, so to speak. I also think that the concept of having the Student Advisory Council provide a recommendation back to the board on an issue does have merit. And I think that is a worthy compromise on this issue. And I actually personally would welcome the views of the entire council, which would include the 3 student representatives, as well as the other members of the council, who all of them applied to be members of this dais, and just we can't accept all of them, right? So, but I think having that recommendation, I think the key though, if we pursue that, and I think we should, is to make sure that we get those recommendations from the council in time for review, so that we have that data before the directors vote. But as long as we have that planning ahead down, then I think this compromise of having a student advisory vote, formal vote, would be a good way forward on this.
Do Kennewick or Richland have a superintendent advisory council like we do, and that level of influence of our students in our what we do?
We all 3 of us have councils. I think all 3 of our councils are different in the way that they act. I'm not sure that I don't think there's functions like ours does, like this kind of back and forth to the board. I think it's more advisory to the superintendent, but I think ours is unique in that way.
I know, I don't even think some of them have a study session, and I love study sessions because it feels like we get a lot more interaction with the kids during study sessions, and I love to hear their opinions. And I know Richland does, and I'm not sure about Kennewick. So that's just another point that we get student advisory advising. So I love that.
I think for me personally, the choice to vote on it in the first place would be the best option, with still being able to have a advisory vote. But if a vote is too contentious or like too big of a vote for any one of us that want to vote on it, I think it's important that we have the choice to not have that vote, so there's no spotlight on us or no record of us having that opinion that could have changed in the future on a big vote.
I agree with Student Board Representative Mason because having that choice would be very important, especially when it comes to topics we might not have we might not be as informed on, or something that might be controversial. Being able to, one, be asked on whether or not we'd be able to vote would be very nice, instead of just either pushing us into the spotlight, being like, oh, do you guys have a vote? I think the idea of it being something we would be asked about beforehand would, personally, I think that would be a good step.
Yeah, to agree with what Danica said, if the board was to go forward with this and have the student representatives have a advisory vote, I would want the option beforehand to kind of avoid any scrutiny or any spotlight with that and going on the record with that. But I also do feel that my voice is heard with that being either in the council or study sessions or in the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's necessarily needed for an advisory vote. Yeah.
I just want to make one more comment. So is it possible, say we decided to go to the Student Action Council and that they would, bring a recommendation, our representatives would go to them and get their recommendation and bring it to us. Can that all be private so that we would be advised of that, but not necessarily, it wouldn't be in I don't want to, not in the public, I guess it wouldn't be in the public sphere, so we would know what their advisory is automatically. That way it wouldn't put, I guess if it was going to them, that would, the student council, then it wouldn't be public, but yet, I'm just trying to think of a way to avoid putting these students on record.
Well, Superintendent Whitney, so like this presentation, for example, there's the slide from the SAC. It says 84% of the SAC voted yes. So and hypothetically, if we went down this route of asking the council for their recommendations on an action item, the data that we would receive from you would be 50% of the SAC voted yes or 75 voted no. Would it be possible to have a summary of the key arguments that the students made? We don't need names. But the information, the arguments, maybe like a transcript without names.
Mm-hmm. And I think, and I'm sure it's hard to recall at this point, but the presentation that was done in February was more like that, where there was high-level kind of thematic comments shared with the board. This is a summary of that, but we can bring back a recommendation in any format that the board requests it. Really anything's possible in that regard, and I think there's lots of ways to group information and share it at a high level without, attributing it to individuals. I think, there's lots of ways to do that. That could give you the information you need, but also kind of protect the anonymity of those giving the information.
So I don't know, I feel, I've been on the board a long time. I've seen a lot of stuff, and I have been beat up really bad over social media and email and everything else. And it is hard. It is hard on me, and it is hard on my children. And I never want to see this happen to our students ever. So that might be my fear talking, but because I have been through so much, that does concern me. I also don't want people to use the student board reps for their own gain, because adults can be very persuasive when it comes to teens. And I know that sometimes we have teens that are very strong-minded and they don't care. But I know at that age, I was very influenced by others and by peer pressure. And I would have a really hard time going against like a favorite teacher or my friends at school and saying something against them. So I have quite a few. I mean, I've listened to the parents too talk about how they don't want their kids. I haven't heard a parent yet. I'm sure there are that are really supportive of this. I love that. If Kennewick and Richland want to do that, that's great. I have been looking throughout the state. I've asked as much as I can when I can. I have actually asked the highest person up in this state, because it almost seemed like he was for these advisory votes. And when I directly asked him, he said, no, I'm not. My board is, so I support what my board does. But I am not in favor. And I said, why? And he said, because they go really well until they don't. And I'm like, amen. 95% of the time, they will go really well until they don't. And I want to avoid until we don't. And there was one school that approached me, and they came to your and my recommendation, and they said that they had advisory votes. They no longer have student reps on their board. And I'm like, why? And they said, because our student reps were getting beat up, and we could not do that to them anymore. So I think I have kind of a jaded view because of some of these things. I'm more worried about the 5 or 10% of the time than I am. I love our students on this board. I love their voice. I love what they bring to it, and I want to avoid that 10%. If I ever did a student advisory vote, I do not think I would approve it unless there was a veto power by the board, and I don't know if that's possible. Kids, I don't know if they would always understand the ramifications of a certain vote. It's like, oh, I have a strong feeling on this. I really want to vote on this. No, we really want your opinion on this, and I really don't want you to vote on this because I don't want the backlash that the community might give you. So, and it might hurt the kids' feelings because I don't want their vote, but it doesn't have anything to do with not wanting their vote. It's 100% about I want to keep them safe. And I know it's okay for them to get some of that, but I think they can get enough of that by giving us their opinions. They are so great to give us our opinions. And I haven't had a kid yet up here that won't give us their opinions. I think the fact that they want to be on the board lends to the fact that they are willing to give us their opinions. So I would like to keep it as it remains. I don't mind hearing, 84% of them want this, 20, or I can't even do math, 16% do not. I'm great with that. I have no problem with that. I think that's fantastic. I just want it more in general. I don't even mind saying, what do you guys think? And then we take a vote after that. And we can even work that into a little bit more formal. But I don't want to vote where it's like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And then they get this really evil thing that goes throughout the internet, and I just don't want to go there. And like I said, I don't think it'll happen 90% of the time. I just don't want to deal with it the other 10.
Superintendent Whitney, if we wanted, so we require the SAC to provide formal recommendations on board action items, does that have to be written into policy?
I don't necessarily think so. We do that now. I mean, we did it on the outrageous outcome number 5. We did it on these particular topics. So we can write it into policy, but I don't think it's required. There may be some benefit into it. Sarah and I can look into it to see if there's some benefits too. And if not in policy, I mean, somewhere in a procedure, there's a student advisory council procedure or policy already. We could write it into the procedure of that. It actually might be a better place for it to be instead of in the body of the policy, but actually in the procedure. This is how you use the student advisory council. And Sarah and I could work on that together if that's of interest to the board.
I personally would prefer not to have any language that might suggest that is optional for us to have the advice of the SAC. I would prefer to make sure there's language and policy that would require the board to have the SAC's recommendation before we vote on an action item. And we can play with that language, but if we're not going to have the student advisory vote, I would like to make sure that we have a policy of making sure that the SAC is consulted before we vote.
On every action item?
Well, we could describe what type of action item we want for a SAC recommendation, budget or boundary or curriculum or whatever. We can list it out so that it's clear, and then whatever action item does not fall in that list, then we don't need it. We don't seek the SAC's recommendation.
How often does your superintendent student action council meet? Isn't it quarterly throughout the school year, like 4 meetings during the school year?
I think we meet 6 times a year. Our first meeting's tomorrow. We have one like September, October. I don't think we do in December, January, and then, or not in December, January, February, March, and then May.
And you know what I've really appreciated about your timing is when we do have a need for student voice, you arrange those board meetings around that student voice. And I love that. Personally, budget, I wouldn't want that to go to the students. The complexities of that and the responsibility of that, I just don't think that our students need to do that. So, and that one happens at the end of the summer, which is great because our students are brand new. But yeah, boundaries. Oh, I absolutely want the kids' voice on that. I absolutely want our students' voice on that. I want, yeah, there's so many things that student voice. But that's the other thing too. We're elected officials, and we represent a large, vast amount of people. And students are who we serve, but they are also only a portion of that. And as a parent, I am very vested in my children's education. That's the reason I'm here. Our community is very vested in the future. And so sometimes I'm like, if we're only getting one aspect of that with an advisory vote, do we need to go out and get more aspects of our community with advisory votes? That's opening in a whole nother can of worms.
So, real quick, so you went out and got information from the SAC on this advisory vote, correct? So
As directed by the board.
Right,
You asked
right,
me to do that.
exactly. So I mean, honestly, this is just how as I'm kind of putting my thoughts together as we're getting these comments. I really do agree with what Amy said. I don't want to lose our student our board reps. They are critical, and if it kind of seems like to me that I don't also. I mean, I understand what Director Kennedy's saying. But what concerns me about that, having more formal, is that, and a requirement, is then if there's ever something that is controversial, that would have to be brought up to him. You know, I'll be honest, I kind of like the way we're doing it now. The board directs, and then it's presented. And I think it's working. And as when I'm looking at our board reps right now, when Amy was talking about the boundary thing, they nodded their head, yeah, we want that. But that when she mentioned the budget, I could see that there was some concern there. I guarantee. So I honestly, I kind of like the way we're doing it right now. I mean, we advise when we need the recommendation, and of course, if they were to come to us and say we would like to advise on it to you guys, to the board, I don't think we would definitely welcome, never tell them no. So that's just how I feel.
So I served on the SAC the previous school year, and so I'm very familiar with the board coming to us about the student advisory voting, but we also did have a couple meetings where we talked about boundaries and students' opinions. So we would do workshops on how different students felt about different boundary maps that we presented. So I do feel like the current model with SAC does work because we are presented with topics where when they need student input, we are doing workshops in different groups. We are talking about how this would impact us as students, how it would impact different levels of students or students in the future. We did talk a lot about just topics that the board would ask. Budget wasn't something that we ever got, but we did get boundaries. We got the advisory voting, and I feel like we could get other topics.
School names and mascots.
We did get colors, naming, mascots. We all talked about as a student advisory council. We always walked around, worked together, so I feel like it currently works like that, and I feel the way SAC is set up is beneficial for student voice and student input because we do end up spending a lot of time talking about these topics. And by the end of those meetings, we do normally come up like with 84% voted yes. So at the end of the meeting, we normally come up with typically a decision as to general on what we do or don't agree on. And so I feel like it does work as of right now.
So I hear some general consensus around the concept of continuing to use the Student Advisory Council as an advisory council to the board. In its current model, I've heard some suggestions about what policy and procedure can look like, and Sarah and I can look into that, bring some recommendations back to the board. We just need some clear direction around the actual advisory voting. I've heard those that want to consider it want to put some pretty significant boundaries around it that centers student choice on whether or not they participate, is what I've heard. So I just need to clarify that, and then I think we're there.
Does anyone want to tell her opinion? I think mine was pretty adamant, so what do you guys feel?
So I'm going to agree with, my opinion is in line with what Amy's saying.
So to just stick only with the Student Advisory Council recommendations?
Yes.
I support a student advisory vote with the guardrails that Kennewick School District uses, for example. But yeah, I mean, I think it'd be a useful tool, but I also am fine with maybe if a review of the current policy language around SAC, and if necessary, tweaking it to make it more effective if it needs to be done so, to make sure that the SAC it continues to be a useful advisory body for the board. But in the merits, I support the advisory vote.
I think it would be beneficial to have policy around asking the student representatives to say, should the student representatives vote in a majority, whether that be 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4, if we have 4 student reps that they want to do an advisory vote, that we would do that, but it was based on a vote by the student reps elect or appointed every year, because I think that we should give the student reps like voice in what they want to do. That being said, it's a lot to like take on, be like, okay, you're appointed to the board, and do you want to have this vote? When really it's like, what does that mean? So, I mean, it's that I can see where that would add a significant amount of stress to both student reps and on you, Superintendent Whitney, of having to educate and then put forward the kind of like all of these are the pros, these are the cons. So maybe I'm talking myself out of it.
This is the thing, if ever we aren't listening to the students and getting their opinions, then I think we need to have another serious talk.
Yeah.
So that's
and I feel like they feel heard at this point, and I feel like I'm keeping them out of danger. So I don't know. I stand by what I said before, but are we kind of split, or?
Well, that's another interesting point, because I know that Kennewick has 1 student rep and 1 student rep elect who does not participate in the advisory vote. They're simply there in kind of like a internship to become the student rep for the next year. I'm not familiar with how many student reps Richland has, but I don't believe it's 3.
No.
And so I think
if it's more than 1, it's only 2.
2, thank you. So I think there's some power in numbers, and I would hope that the amount of student reps that we have would encourage them to be brave and participate. And the student, I've thinking back on student reps in the previous years, there's always been at least one who is not afraid to speak their mind when they feel passionately about something. And that is when I really, really, really appreciate having student board reps, when they get to release, when there's something that they have an opinion on, and although their voice might shake when they share their opinion or they're reading from a note, I don't ever take that for granted, and I love having that voice. And so I'm gonna switch my opinion to stick with the superintendent student advisory council and not move forward with the advisory vote.
I will just add to that, we are considering adding another one, so we will have 4, which is far more than the rest of the other.
So at this point, it's 3 of you are sticking with sacrament recommendations, and it sounds like, Dr. Kennedy, you could really kind of support either way, although you do feel like the advisory vote has merit.
That's correct.
So that's kind of where you are as a board now. So I would leave it to you, President Phillips, to summarize the direction and move forward if you feel like you're ready to do that.
Well, it sounds like we are all okay with going forth as they have in the past, but it also sounds like we would like a little bit more accurate direction. So I think what I would encourage you to do, and my fellow board members can correct me on this, is to, when you do come back with an opinions, we would like a little bit more detail in those opinions. Does that make sense? Like 84% of the student, like you did today. 80
Accurate?
More.
Or do you want detail?
No.
I don't think I've ever given you inaccurate
No, you've
information.
I shouldn't
if
say that.
you would
I'm
like
so sorry.
more
I said
detailed
that more-
information,
I
I'd
said-
be happy to provide that. Yeah, no problem.
Instead of the majority, like the majority of the student boards agree with this. What's interesting about this is this was 84%. I think last year it was like 50%. So it changed quickly over a year. I don't remember what it was. It was always 84%? Okay. Anyway, but so I just wondered if it would change from year to year, just depending on what students were in the room. But yeah, so I think we would all enjoy having, instead of the majority, maybe this is how it was divided, something, just a little more detail.
Sure, and as I said, the original presentation had that. This is a summary, and I'm happy to provide whatever detail the board wants. The students are super articulate, and their themes are well laid out, and I could bring the posters in, and you could see
I
their
don't think we need to go in that
articulation.
much detail.
Well, I'm just saying, it's not hard at all to take their thinking and bring as much of it to the board as you'd like, because they're just that good at
Yeah.
articulating their rationale for things. So what you're asking for is totally doable. We have very bright students whose voice matters, and they're pretty incredible why they're providing it. So happy to do that on their behalf.
And I hope that you realize that your voice 100% matters to us. And I have no doubt that if you guys wanted to advise us on the budget, you could. I just don't know if you have time with everything in your schooling to do all the research in it. Does that make sense? There are some things that you really get better than we do, and we want to hear your voice on it. And there's some things that you may not be as interested in. But we still want your opinion, because there's pieces of the budget that we have heard from our students that have helped. So I hope you all know we want your voice. That's why you are here.
So I appreciate the deep conversation. This was important for us to get consensus around. I was working really hard tonight not to share my opinion, because I have a very heavily biased opinion about protecting our students from having to go on the record, and that has to do with sitting with 12 to 15 student board representatives who all but one had concerns about it. So I worked really hard not to bias the conversation tonight. That being said, I do want to pull on the thread of this voice program, which was really collectively developed by student board representatives, the board, and myself, is a model in the state. People call us all the time and want to copy what we're doing. So I think in a lot of ways we're doing the right thing. It's always a good thing to be reflective and push new practices up against what we're doing, and we can always improve. But I just want to thank the board for the opportunity to have leaned into the Student Voice program, and you let us take some risks around it, and I think it's paid off and certainly has made me a better superintendent. I think it's made you a better board, and it keeps at the forefront what's most important, and that's educating the youth of this community. So thank you for allowing me to do this work. Appreciate it.
And I want to add one more thing. Last year, when we gave that presentation, they put us at the worst time slot in all of WASDA. It's when everybody leaves. And it was all about student board reps, and our board was presenting, and I was like ticked off. And then they said, well, we put you there because we knew it would help people to stay. And I'm like, I don't even believe that. Anyway, yeah, right, maybe they did. I don't know. That room was packed. It was packed. And I'm usually gone by that one, because usually they have lousy The last ones aren't good. But everyone wanted to do it the way we do it because they're like, your students really, even students came up to us. It sounds like your students really have voice. We don't feel like we have a voice on our board. We love how you do it. How can we do this? And the one was the one that had no longer had, we want to get student board reps back on. We just want to provide protections for them so that we don't get into the same situation we were before. So it was fascinating, and I want you to know that when you go to WASDA, you will be looked at. Honestly, our deciding who was going to be on the board was very much influenced by what will they do to represent our school at WASDA, because we are looked to as leaders, and we felt very strongly about this group that you would be excellent representatives of our school. So thank you.
Was there further direction you needed?
No, I think I have clarity. We're confirming the prior direction, so there's some policy work we need to do, and then Sarah and I will work on doing some procedural work around the
Wasn't there other
student
two other things? I think Director Kennedy, you needed one on the amount of board reps, and then what was the other one? Did you get direction on that?
Yep, multi-year
Oh.
terms. You're going to keep moving forward with the direction you gave me in February, which is that it's allowed under the current policy, so we don't need to do anything with that. Adding an additional student board representative, we'll need to change the policy. And then the Student Advisory Council recommendation will likely provide some clarity in a procedure. I think that's where that best belongs, but Sarah and I will do that work and bring that back to you as a board in a timely manner. I also need to own and recognize that this took a long time for us to bring it full circle with the board, and that truly is on me. We got distracted with things like boundaries and naming schools and bonds and those kinds of things. So just know that in the future, when the Student Advisory Council is asked for a recommendation, we'll bring those back in a timely manner. So just want to also acknowledge that this was a bit of an anomaly based on some competing needs for the superintendent's time. So I'm going to stay here and do future agenda items if you don't mind, so I don't have to run over there and be
Yes,
out of breath.
please.
Okay. So future agenda items, our next board meeting is, I cannot believe it's already October. It blows my mind, like before we know it, it'll be Christmas, and it'll be spring break, and then we'll be at graduation, like that's how this is gonna work. But we will have a study session on October 8th that's focused on our multi-tiered systems of support. I've been referencing an audit done by AIR, and Director Brown actually specifically asked in a board meeting if you would be provided the recommendations or the outcomes of that audit. This organization came in and did a full analysis of our current multi-tiered system of support, and they made some recommendations about where the district can, they gave us some kudos where it's going well, and then they gave us some areas that we could focus on, so we'll be sharing that information with you. As I already talked about, it's time for me to bring our district annual objective action plans to you, so I'll be doing that. We will have our very first Student Action Council report. So like I said, we meet tomorrow, so they'll be in front of you, our 3 student board reps will be in front of you presenting about that meeting and the outcomes of that. Mira will continue her series of celebrating academic achievement, this time focused on Stevens Middle School, who is a Washington Schools Recognition Program winner for the 22-23 school year. And Mira may be getting the award for the most board presentations done in a single year by the end of the year. So we'll keep her in mind for that nomination. So that will be our next board meeting.
I apologize. We have not done any public comment after any of our reports. Is there anyone in the room that would like to comment on any of the reports that we just had? Sorry about that. I thought of it a couple times. I'm like, oh, I got to make sure I do this, and then I forgot. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your comments the comments that were made. Moving on to communications. Mr. Simmons, would you like to start?
Yeah, I'll just keep it real brief. So I really don't have much to say other than I made the crazy decision to represent the district unofficially at the Fiery Foods Festival during the chili feed. Danica made sure that if I didn't say anything that she would bring it up anyway, so I have to say something. So I did my best. It was pretty bad. I made it. Okay, I did good. There wasn't enough milk to solve that problem, but yeah, so that's really all I have.
I would like to, from the bottom of my heart, thank Director Simmons for his sacrifice on behalf of the school district at the Fiery Foods Festival. I too was asked, and I said no, for that very reason. But I'm glad that Director Simmons stepped up and did his duty.
You got it next year.
Probably not, but I just want to again congratulate McGee and looking forward to hearing about Stevens Middle School's great achievements in a few weeks. So that's all I have. Thanks.
First of all, I'd like to, again, congratulate McGee. And second of all, I believe, either last weekend or the weekend before, I was at a Habitat for Humanity event, volunteering for the Music and Munchies event for Habitat for Humanity. And it was very interesting to see how our community comes together, although it was in Richland, it wasn't in Pasco. It's very interesting to see how our community comes together with a partner like Habitat for Humanity, and to see how everyone helps a thing like that to succeed in the Tri-Cities.
I want to say, number one, that I was at the Fiery Foods Festival, and I did tell Director Simmons that I would tell the board if he didn't. But I also got the opportunity to volunteer for the Pasco School District booth at the festival, which was a really interesting experience, as I was one of two people working the booth, but I was the only one that was bilingual. So struggling to explain new Parent Square app in Spanish when I can't even explain it in English was really rough. And then I also want to talk about at Shawana, we are doing a new little segment on our school news, which I'm really excited about for Hispanic Heritage Month. So we are actually interviewing one of our, I think he was a former art teacher, Saul Martinez, who opened a Café con Arte in downtown Pasco. He's our business highlight. So I just wanted to say that's up and coming at my school because I'm really excited about that. And again, congratulations to McGee, and I think that's it.
Yeah, just to keep it brief, I wanted to congratulate McGee again. I saw a couple of my teachers in the crowd earlier. Kind of makes my heart warm to see my past teachers getting celebrated, and yeah.
Director Simmons, I was at the Fiery Foods Festival, and I missed you doing this contest because I saw Seth Johnson participate, and he did an amazing job. Didn't make it to the 10. So you did the one where you ate 10 peppers.
Yeah.
Did you eat all 10?
I got to the last two.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Why didn't we all know about this? I would have paid to have gone and seen that event. But I mean, watching Seth Johnson participate was great. Also, I didn't know there was multiple sessions of the pepper eating contest. But thank you. I didn't get asked, and I don't ever want to be asked. So I appreciate that they didn't ask me. In addition to attending the Fiery Foods Festival and stopping by the Pasco School District booth, which I think is always so great that we have such a great community presence at our events. I really appreciate seeing all this improvement data that we at board meetings. I'm in a school improvements class right now at WSU, and so it's interesting to look at this information through a new lens, and as I continue learning, I might want to think about inviting these schools back to, and I know we talk about this at the State of the School reviews, but what was the action plan and the individual tasks and systems and processes that were set up that caused that data to improve so significantly, especially like we saw with McGee. I just love to kind of pick people's brains, because we talk about data at State of the School reviews, but we don't exactly say, no, I guess we do go into systems and processes. We talk about MTSS. We talk about, how we're bringing consultants on to help with the state test, but on a really foundational level, what's being done in classrooms to improve those scores. So I'll have to think about that and kind of process that, and as I hear more of these reports, because as a future school leader, I really want to think about how can I use all this information for the benefit of more students.
I'm glad I missed the fiery festival. Not my thing. I don't like burning my mouth for forever. So more power to you, Steve. The only thing I want to congratulate on, after already congratulating the district on various things during this meeting, was on the CTE award that was given to Laura Jones. We have an incredible CTE program in this district. And what I love is with the opening of this new high school and the enhancement of our programs at both Chiawana and at Pasco High School, it's just going to get better. So kudos to everybody in this district that helps that program increase. I love that we are giving our students so many choices, and we are doing so much to help prepare them for careers as soon as they exit high school if they would like to. So congratulations, keep up the good work, Pasco School District, on our incredible CTE programs.
I just wanted to acknowledge many of district staff started our day this morning in a moment of silence at our bus garage in acknowledgement for the 3rd year anniversary of the loss of our dear friend and colleague and Mr. Bus Driver, Richard Lenhart. Nancy Lenhart was there this morning to lead us all in that moment of silence, and we also spent time waving at buses as buses came in the morning, and it just was a great reminder for me that we should spend more time doing that. It's a pretty fun thing to do, go out there at 8:45, by 9:15 they're all in, but to welcome our bus drivers home from dropping our kids off at school. But it's always an amazing opportunity anytime you spend time in space with Nancy Lenhart. She's just a phenomenal example of grit and grace, who has taken the tragic loss of her husband and turned it into advocacy for safety for bus drivers. She, in partnership with the Teamsters, and the Teamsters were really instrumental in driving legislation that will require, or that now makes it illegal to trespass on a school bus. It has always been illegal to trespass into a school, but not on a school bus. So that is now a law in Washington State, and so it's like one of 9 states in the nation. So her goal now is to tackle Washington, D.C. and push that legislation forward at that level. So just a phenomenal opportunity to spend time with her, and she just is an amazing person, and it just is, I think, important that we all acknowledge what today means for her, and means for those that loved Richard and the students that rode on Richard's bus. I also had the opportunity to present at the City Council yesterday at their workshop. I have to say, when these board meetings are on my calendar, I'm not all that nervous for those, but I sure was nervous when I saw the City Council meeting on my calendar, and I appreciate Raul Satal and Seth Johnson went with me. I presented on our CTE programs, in particular, amplified that work, because I think there's a nice kind of nexus and connection with the business industry locally. I mean, we're really trying hard to not only meet our outrageous outcome of graduating students with 100% of our students graduating, but really honoring our commitment to ensuring they have a career path and offering that to our industry partners as a way to build workforce right here locally. So presented that information to them and just appreciate their willingness to let us come to a meeting and do that. I also wanted to acknowledge we had the NASSP, which is the National Association of Secondary School Principals. Hold on. The National Association of Secondary School Principals. The executive director of that national organization was in Pasco the last couple of days because our very own Raquel Martinez is the president of that national organization. So he came here to visit Pasco, and it always is, it's easy for those of us, especially someone like me who it was my first professional job. I've been here 30 years. I've never worked anywhere else. I think the way we do things is just the way that all districts do it. And to see our district through the eyes of a visitor like Ron, who gets the opportunity to visit schools across the nation, and hear his compliments and amplification of the way we collaborate and really exemplify and hold tight to the core values of who we are and the way that we do our work, from how we work with Fowler Construction on a construction site, to the way we work with our high school principals, to the way that we tackle barriers and challenges. And it's just fun to see our organization through the eyes of like the newest person to visit it. So just want to first thank Ron for his visit and Raquel for organizing that. And then just, it makes hard days worth it when you hear that people can come in and see the fruits of those efforts. And so just a super proud day to be the superintendent in Pasco. And then just also want to acknowledge, if I haven't said it already, that Mason is turning 16 on Thursday. So. You're welcome, Mom. You're welcome. Your mom gave me full permission, if not directed me to embarrass you tonight. So I think I followed your directive.
Thank you for the cupcakes. They were yummy.
So we are needing to have an executive session under 4231-101G for performance of a public employee and I for litigation. We're expecting it to probably take about 40 minutes, I would expect.
And with that, we will adjourn or